Welcome to this Q&A episode of the MedTech 101 podcast. My name is Rodney Moses, for those who are new on the podcast, and this is the first time we've done one of these, and I thought it was quite important to start also answering some of the questions that have been sent through from you guys. And the first question is, or the only question we're going to be answering today is actually, how do we run the podcast? How do we keep this podcast inclusive and entertaining for everyone? Firstly, we don't charge the guests that come on the podcast anything. In fact, we want to maintain a free platform for medical device companies to come and talk and share their technology and whatever they're waking up to next. But the reason why we do this is basically because the idea of charging companies to come on the podcast makes it sort of like a closed gate community, where our aim for this podcast is to basically increase the knowledge and awareness of some of the latest technologies out there right now in MedTech space. And sometimes startup companies might have a really tight budget which they will not be able to go beyond. And I know the bigger companies will have bigger budgets, but for us to remain inclusive of both the startups and the big companies, we took this approach to say, okay, you know what, we're gonna be focusing on taking the knowledge first, which is giving them a platform to talk. And this is how it was, and this is how we ran the podcast for quite some time. And but obviously, as the podcast has started growing, the team has started growing. So now there's roughly 4 people in total who are part of this podcast behind the scenes. And what we have started to do now to maintain a sustainable growth, we have started to say, you know what, it's okay, we'll still remain free of charge. We don't charge anyone anything. However, the companies that come on this podcast and they want to donate money, that they want to support the podcast in any particular way, we've started accepting those. So we have a PayPal link, we have a Patreon link that we have for companies to donate money, and that money goes directly into the digital marketing budget we have, that goes directly into the operating costs that we have. So everything is reinvested directly back into the podcast, so we continue growing. And the reason why we also wanted to do this was because we have had some donations from the CBO, or the Chief Business Officer of Indiatics, the company that I interviewed a few weeks ago. And that video is up on YouTube. Please go and watch. And if you'd like to donate as well to the podcast, you're free as well. This is not just exclusively limited to companies, but even also the listeners right now who are listening to this and think, okay, maybe there's one thing I can do to help the podcast. You're welcome to do so. We don't limit anything. In fact, we welcome any help we get. And additionally, some of the help we've gotten was the partnership agreement we signed with MedTech World, which is a fascinating company that hosts MedTech conferences around the world, which aim to give companies the platform to showcase their new technology in these exhibitions. So we basically help that, and because of that, we also get some free access to the conferences. We have now, I think, about a number of guests actually that have come on the podcast because of that partnership as well. So not all partnerships have to be monetary, and that's what we do. And yeah, so that's why we don't charge any money, and this is why we basically keep it free for everyone. And the reason why it's also partially because we figure that by charging people, we kind of leave out some of the best things that are out there. And the aim for this, obviously, as you guys have heard or seen over the past number of days and stuff, or past months, essentially, is that we want to keep producing entertaining content. And some of the solo episodes I do are based off my essays, and the guests that do come here do sacrifice their time to be here, and that's all really appreciated. And we kind of like to see that kind of support as well, because even the support that people could also do to the podcast is not just monetary, but just simply telling your friends about this, letting them know what what this podcast is about if you love it, because essentially that's how we keep growing. And yeah, word of mouth is the best form of marketing. And yeah, so that's how we run the podcast, and that's how we don't charge people. And the money that's been running the podcast, excluding the donations, came from my savings. When I started this podcast, I just put my savings into this, and with your support, we have been able to get to this point where we continuously keep making this content. And that's what I just wanted to say today. I didn't want to expand a lot, so this QA form episodes will be some of the shortest episodes on the podcast, just to answer some burning questions that have been coming through. So yeah, feel free to subscribe, tell your friends, feel free to make a donation if you'd like to. Feel free to make requests as well. We've got a Patreon platform for that. If you want to request certain things that you might want to see on the podcast, or to tell certain companies about what we're doing, please feel free. And yeah, so thank you very much, and I wish you a happy year, to be honest, because I think this is the first time I have been able to speak to you guys since New Year, or January 2024, just to keep in mind the date. And I just want to wish you guys a happy new year, and stay blessed, stay healthy, and yeah, have a good one. Take care.